The 2021 men's college basketball tournament marked the first time in nearly 40 years Oregon State reached the Final Eight. The previous time was 1982, when the Beavers reached the West Regional Final, only to be eliminated by Georgetown. Hi, I'm Michael D. Lee, and I was in Pullman, Washington, covering the Iowa Hawkeye Tournament games in 1982 for WHO Radio in Des Moines. While in Pullman, I had the opportunity to interview Ralph Miller, the legendary Oregon State coach who had previously coached at Iowa. His team was getting ready to face Pepperdine in the tournament. The interview touched on topics such as the tournament format, potential rules changes, and the budding coaching career of his daughter, Shannon Miller. The taped interview was transmitted down the phone line at halftime during Iowa's tournament game against Idaho. Now, an interview with Ralph Miller on Saturday Sportsline Memories.
And it's halftime at the Iowa-Idaho game, and we're talking now with the head coach of Oregon State, Ralph Miller. And Ralph, you'll be playing now against the Pepperdine Waves, the former Iowa coach. How do you feel now getting a bye in this kind of competition, having to wait your turn, so to speak, to play against a team that's already had NCAA tournament experience for this year?
Well, of course, I made my stand clear on that 3 years ago before we ever lost our first bye, that a tournament that is important as the NCAA of all participants should have no byes. You should all start to play at the same time so that no one has an advantage as far as having to wait to play another game. And I do think that there's a psychological edge to a team who has played one game and won it in the NCAA tournament. Now they're going to play a team that supposedly has a bye. That means they're not supposed to win. And as a result, they do come in loose. They play very well. And certainly the last 2 years, the indication has been it wasn't a very smart thing to be a bye team. And I said a year ago that I would not prefer to have a bye again, but unfortunately that's the situation we have right today, and we'll see if we can get by this one now without any more problems.
It's an ironic situation, Ralph. I don't always like to look ahead, and coaches don't like to look ahead either, but you realize, like I do, that there's a possibility here that if Iowa wins against Idaho and you win against Pepperdine, well, it's not just a possibility, it's a reality that you will be playing your old school at which you used to coach in Iowa City.
Well, we had one experience. They came out to the Far West Classic. I think it was Lute's first year at Iowa. And we played on that occasion, and we were fortunate enough to win without too much difficulty. Now, Lute has got a program that is well established, been doing very well now for the last 4 or 5 years. And he has a strong physical ball club. And they can play with anybody. They've proven that over the years. So I don't know as I have a preference if we are fortunate enough to win our game. We have already played Idaho, and if they should win, then that would mean either Pittsburgh, if they won, Pepperdine, they did win, or Idaho, if they won, means that we've already played these teams in the current season. Never had that experience before, so I don't know how it's going to work out.
Well, one more question before we take a break right here, Ralph. I understand that you have signed a contract, or that people at Oregon State who are responsible for such things have signed a contract, and the Oregon State team will be participating a couple of years from now in the Carver Hawkeye tournament, which will, I guess, open up the season for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Talk about that a little bit. And then there's a return engagement as well, I guess.
Oh, yeah. Of course, we're in the same situation, Big Ten, Pac-10. We've got the 18 games to play in our conference, and we also have the Far West Classic, which really takes 21 of the new 28-game format that they're using. So it's basically impossible for us to go to tournaments anymore unless somewhere along the line we can get a return from the host team. And Lute has agreed to this, so I don't know, it was 2 or 3 weeks ago that we were talking about it, and so we will definitely be coming back to Iowa. I don't remember for sure whether it's 83, I think it is, but I'm not positive. That's too far down the road for me to worry about now.
We'll take a break here with Oregon State head coach Ralph Miller and then be back after this timeout. Ralph, can you just go ahead and talk a little bit about the season you've had this year? You lost several starters from last year's team, and all of us know-it-alls in the media were saying, well, Ralph Miller's Oregon State team just can't do as well as it did last year, and by golly, you made us look like fools again.
Well, that's always fun, you know. But actually, there was a lot of logic in what most people thought, because we lost 3 starters that were senior and 2 more, my 6th man, and also, well, in fact, the 5 kids that we lost were in the playing nucleus of 8. And so we really just had 2 starters back, Les Connor, who was a junior college transfer, and Charlie Sitton, who was a freshman a year ago. So we just had the experience of 1 year for those 2 people, and then 1 backup reserve that still has the same position as senior, Rob Holbrook. But long before we even started practice, we were sure that we had a nucleus group that could play very good defense. If you have a good defense, then you've got a chance to survive and eventually have a good ball club. And as it turned out, that's exactly what happened. We do have more quick and speed probably even than we had a year ago. We are a better defensive ball club, and this fact has given us the time to develop an offense entirely different what it used to look like with a big power postman, but it's been an effective offense, and we're just very pleased for this group, because I know it was a challenge to them after following 2 fine years to make people forget, you know, sorry the guys are gone, but we can still produce a good ball club, and they did. And when you do that, why, you come forth with pleasant surprises, and I think that for fans like we have, just like the fans in Iowa, they appreciate these pleasant surprises, so it was fun to give them one.
Ralph, I'd like to talk a little bit about another member of your family, a young daughter. I had the pleasure sitting with your wife and your daughter and son at the banquet yesterday, and we talked a little bit about what they're doing with their lives. And your daughter is in college right now, and she's coaching a sophomore boys basketball team in Corvallis. And one of the things that I've always wondered is, men coach girls' teams and women's teams. Why can't women just turn around and coach boys' teams or men's teams? It's all equal, and it's finally happened.
Well, I think you'll see probably more of this happening as time goes on. It'll be a slow process, naturally. And when the women throughout the United States started to play basketball, there just really weren't many women coaches available, so there were a lot of men that kind of sneaked into the action, so to speak. But I think now, and for the next 15 or 20 years, that you're going to have a lot of women that are going to be very fine coaches. And my own daughter has worked for me in my camps for the last 4 years as a coach. And she's a good teacher. And so she had an opportunity to coach the girls at the same high school as an assistant coach, or to take on this sophomore boys team. And she felt that she'd been dealing with the girls all of her life, and she could gain more experience perhaps by working with the boys, see how she could get along with them, whether she could command their respect and this sort of thing. Well, it worked out well. They won 18 and lost 2, I think, and won their championship in their particular conference, and everybody had a good time. So she has been leaning towards the coaching field, I think, for quite some time. But, you know, you always have the question whether you should or should not. You should not go into it, but I think she pretty well firmed it up several years ago. She was going to give it a whirl and see if she liked it, and certainly the real first experience that she had this year was very enjoyable for her.
Well, does she want to continue it? I guess if you get positive vibes, it reinforces your prior decisions. Everything would seem to indicate to me that she wants to go ahead and follow it up. But I guess you and Mrs. Miller are the ones that really know that, and of course your daughter Shannon.
Well, you're taking a lot for granted here that the parents know exactly what their children are going to do. You don't. But I think that as of the moment, that Shannon has definitely decided that she wants to give this coaching life a whirl. And like anybody that goes into the coaching field, she wants to go as far as she can, hoping that one of these days she might be a college coach. But I don't know yet that she's got any preference as to whether she works with the boys or the girls groups. She's always thought she would be with the girls, and as I said, this year was a little different experience, and she did enjoy it. But then, you have to wait your time and pay your dues, so to speak. And nobody's sure how far women coaches will go with men's teams in the near future, but I certainly think that somewhere down the line you'll see some women that are coaching boys' teams and doing a very fine job.
A few final questions for Oregon State head basketball coach Ralph Miller after this timeout. Ralph, I'd like to talk a little bit as we wrap up the interview about some of the rule changes which went into effect this year, particularly the alternating possessions rule on jump balls. And I've seen several situations where a defensive team forces the good play, they force the jump, and then they have to go right back on defense again simply because it's not their turn to take the ball. That, in my opinion, simply has to be remedied. I'd like your opinion on that and what other changes you think are needed, including your views on the shot clock.
Well, number one, the Pac-10 conference did not treat the close guarding 5-second call as a jump ball this year. It was used as a turnover, like all-time counts, the 10-second, 3-second, inbounding the pass in 5-second, as a violation. Now, I think this is what the national rules will do with the present rule, that they will adopt the experiment that we have had this year. Everybody was satisfied with it. You should credit people for doing a good job. And if you're going to penalize anybody, it should be somebody that did not do a good job. And in this case, if the defense can make you hold that ball for 5 seconds, then they deserve to get it. And the offense made a mistake, just like the man who stood there with his foot in the 3-second count, laying too long. So I do think that this will replace the rule that we have probably this year. We also took one step further. We eliminated even the opening tip-off. We flipped a coin. You have the ball. The next half, the other team gets the ball to start the game with. And I like that even better than the single jump ball situation, because I've always felt from many, many years it was a very difficult chore for a man to throw the ball straight up in the air, particularly as the players have gotten taller and taller. And it seems that the people that are supposed to be making judgment here as to whether it's straight or not, they don't want to embarrass the guy that throws it up. And so many times I've been very unhappy with the opening tip-off. And this way, as we have it in the Pac-10, I don't have to get upset to start the ball game with. And I don't know whether this will take over or not. But this is not new. The girls' basketball rules have used this in the past, and I think if we're to get rid of the jump ball, hey, let's get rid of it. And I think this will happen. As far as the clock is concerned, I'm one of the old-timers that do not feel that the clock should ever be put into college basketball. I see no advantage for it whatsoever. I believe that a coach and his team should always have the right to establish a strategy to try to win a game. That's why you play the thing, to try to win it. And certainly there are situations where you cannot go out and shoot with another team because they have the rebounding power or whatever. And I would hate to see the game of basketball stereotyped as it is in the professional ranks. Scoring is all you're talking about when you want the clock. Scoring is not what made basketball popular. The pros have tried to force that down your throat for some 35 years. And yet this is not what brought fans into the basketball arenas. And the pros cannot touch college basketball. It's still producing more and more spectators and more people become interested in. The pro game has done nothing for basketball. It's used the college game and tried to exploit a few things like the three-point play, for crying out loud. Somebody throws a hope shot up and it goes in. Now, you give a person 3 points for this, and yet here's a team out there that makes a beautiful backdoor play work, for example, a wide-open layup. Now, that's the play that ought to get 3 points, not somebody standing out at 30 feet shooting it up. So I, for one, would not like to see the college game change and put the clock in. I might buy something if they put it down on the 45-second level or something like that. But I'm not even sure I'd want it at all, because the only advantage I could see in a clock is to take the monkey off of officials' backs. And they don't have to worry about the 5 seconds, or they don't have to worry about the 10 seconds. They really don't have to worry about the 3-second counts. And just take it out and let them have a better chance to arbitrate the game instead of having to make so many judgment calls. But I would hate to see that come, even for the benefits that you could get for the official. You take away the right of a team and their coaches to try to win a basketball game, because that's what it's all about, try to win.
Ralph Miller, thank you for being on at halftime with us. Good luck this afternoon against the Pepperdine Waves.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Ralph Miller, the head coach at Oregon State, will be back in just a moment.
As mentioned earlier, Miller's Oregon State team reached the Final Eight in 1982, but lost to Georgetown in the West Regional Final. A later investigation into the Oregon State basketball program vacated 3 tournament appearances in the early 1980s, which included the 1982 Final Eight team. Nonetheless, Ralph Miller will always be remembered as one of college basketball's coaching greats. He retired from Oregon State in 1989 and died in 2001. For Saturday Sportsline Memories, I'm Michael D. Lee.